Jbasser's Exposed Vet Productions weekly show on this 30th day of October 2025, one day before the goblins come out and ring your doorbell. My name is John Stacy. They call me Jbasser. I am the owner of Exposed Vet and Exposed Vet Productions. My sidekick today, my co-host is Mr. Ray Cobb. Mr. Ray Cobb is also a radio host on WZYX radio. He does his shows on Tuesday mornings, Central Time. That's 9 o'clock a.m. Is that right, Ray?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been a guest on
You
his show
can
several
join
times.
us on WZYXradio.net and
Yeah,
listen to it live.
yeah. And he'll reach out and touch you now. But Ray's kind of he's kind of retired. He does things like this. He spent many years with the American Legion. Uh, he's one of the surviving, or the only surviving member of a band that had a very, very popular hit record back in the 60s. The
Yeah,
band's called The
68.
Uncalled For. Yeah, it's called The Uncalled For. And Ray was the drummer of that band, and he's probably still got the original drums in his house. He's done a lot of different things. He was a photographer in the military, got exposed to Agent Orange at Fort McClellan, Alabama. He rode that horse his whole career taking pictures, and he's worked for the governor of Texas. He's worked for, he's covered the Atlanta Braves back in their heyday, back when Chipper Jones and them folks was playing. And now he's basically dedicated his time to helping veterans, and he's doing that. And he's got some information for us that he learned today. And we're going to lead off with that because we're going to start digging into some VA claim stuff and timing and right now. So, Ray, you're up.
Okay. Thank you, John. Yeah. This is the time of year I kind of miss things because I had the privilege of covering 5 World Series in my days as a photographer. And so when you see a game like last night where the Blue Jays pitcher, a rookie, did so well and set records, and you kind of miss that. I actually was present when the gentleman from the Diamondbacks pitched the 5th perfect baseball game against the Braves back in, oh gosh, that would have probably been in the 97, 96, 97 era. But Johnson was his name through that
Randy Johnson.
through that perfect game.
Yeah.
And that was exciting. I normally would shoot a game and then leave about the 5th or 6th inning when I got everybody, all the batters, all the pitchers that were going to be there, and then you could pull up your pictures for the news as to which one ended up doing something key. That particular night, because it was a no-hitter and a perfect game, you didn't leave. You didn't want to leave. You just sit there and watched. Wasn't a whole lot to take pictures of, so you just kind of sit there and watched. But yeah, I miss that this time of year when the World Series is going on and everything.
I've seen
But
him
yeah,
pitch a lot.
I got a phone call. She called me about a different matter, and that's one of our county service officers. And we got to talking, and I just finally asked her. I said, "What's going on with VA and VA claims?" And she said, "Well, I'll just tell you exactly what's happening all the way up to the Board of Veterans Appeals." I said, "Oh, well, okay, that's great. What's going on?" She said, "Well, we're still taking claims. Our office is still open. We're looking at the claims. We're getting them ready. We're processing them, sending them to the centralized location for distribution to the regions." And
That's Janesville,
she said,
Wisconsin.
"But the regions are closed. So those are stockpiling up." And I said, "Well, I understand claims are still being approved or whatever." She said, "Well, no, not really." She said, "Anything in October that was approved is, till October the 1st, which was back in September, is being sent out. It's being handled. Anything after that has to be done in the regional office. Is not. The regional office are shut down. They're not even receiving claims. However, anyone who was previously scheduled for a CMP prior to October. It came up. Then the hospital group goes ahead and issues, or they can go ahead and issue to have those CMPs done. So the
Mhm.
CMPs, if one was done prior to October 1st, or the request
Mhm.
was made prior to October 1st, those are done and are being done in October.
Okay.
Now the DAV is still working full. She said they've had 5 or 6 VAD hearings at our local county this month,
Okay.
and for the month of October. And she said they anticipate, as long as there's a backlog uh, at the Board of Veterans Appeals, they will continue to have those. She
Mhm.
doesn't see those. She said by the backlog they have, we could probably go into January or February and still be having CMPs. I mean, still be having claim
Mhm.
hearings.
Yeah, that's
So
what I heard.
that's basically what it sounds like is happening. They're taking the claims, they're getting them ready, they're submitting them, and it gets up for distribution. I think is it in Wisconsin, Minnesota,
Well,
somewhere up there where the
distribution goes up to
center is.
Janesville, Wisconsin.
Okay, so up there
All
it gets
claims
up to
go there.
Wisconsin, and they can't send them out to the regional offices, to the agents that or to the adjudicators, because the district regional offices are closed,
Mhm.
like Nashville, like Atlanta. They're
Right.
all shut down,
They're
so they're not
they're
receiving
closed.
any of those claims.
Yeah, they're closed, but they're not shuttered. There's people still working inside there.
Yeah, there's a
So
few people in there still working,
yeah, yeah,
a
that's what it is.
limited few.
Now, to counter to drive nails in that point that you just made, I had one picked up this morning that was taken. It was an appeal taken off of out of Janesville, and it was taken down to St. Petersburg to the DRO down
So
there. Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
so now it's
And
down St.
so
Petersburg. Now what's going to be interesting is see what happens or how long it takes it down in St. Petersburg before
they're
it.
looking. The
I mean,
process
she
the
did not
process I'm
know.
going through.
She was
Go ahead.
under the impression that the adjudicators in the regional offices were not working.
Mm,
I don't know. She
well,
said
they're
she had
shuttered.
nothing.
Yeah, they're closed, but they're not shuttered. That's the information that I do have, and there are people working. Maybe they have got some time constraints. We're talking about October or whatever, because we're going on 30 days now in this shutdown, and so anything they might have had before the shutdown, maybe they're trying to clean up and work it out and get it out of the way. Anything they
Yeah.
receive after the fact, that may not, they might have to stack them. So I mean, but
Well, that
uh,
was her impression. That was her
mhm,
impression of what's going on.
okay.
Just what you said
Now,
there. They're kind of, if
mm,
it was done, if they received something prior to October the 1st, they're working on it. They're trying to get it out, trying to get it cleaned up. Anything after that um,
mhm.
is at a
Now, that's the
standstill.
claim. Okay. Now the appeals, uh, independent level appeal you get into. I mean, like you've got a couple officers that do the HLRs, a couple officers that do the supplemental claims. Of course, you got the Board of Veteran Appeals, and they told them flat no, they wasn't shutting down. They was going to continue to do. The judge told the secretary that we're not shutting down. We're going to continue to do our job. The court says we're going to do our job too. And good thing about the federal circuit is that the VA can request them to do something, but see, they're a co-equal branch of government. So the court can tell them to go pound sand, which is a good thing.
Go
But
play tiddlywinks, huh?
yeah, so
Yeah.
they're still looking at 145 days for a Tyler review part, and then you're looking at I don't know the exact quantification of number that's the supplemental claims have right now, but I think it's a little bit longer. And the board's actually sped up some too. They're getting a little better. I mean, they used to be 3 years, 4 years for I had for just a regular review with no evidence, but it's improved greatly over the past 8 or 10 months. I waited 26 months on mine back 2 years ago, but it's improved a whole lot since then. So, my best advice, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Ray. I don't get political on this show at all, but I do want to say one thing. I don't care which political party you belong to. This message is for the congressmen and senators out there. Congress really can't do their job right now. The Senate needs to get together, get in a room, and stay in that stinking room until you got a bipartisan agreement to come out of there to open it back up. Because come Saturday,
I agree.
kids are going to go hungry.
Well, it's really, I reflected back on my show Tuesday, and this is in a way that's somewhat of a scary point. Um, I reflected back to my Western civilization classes in college
Yeah.
and the Roman Empire. There were certain
Hmm.
things that happened which caused the collapse of the Roman Empire. The
This is
very
one of them.
first thing that happened was individuals were having to pay more in 50% of their annual income in taxes. And now
Yep.
that happened here, I think is about 3 or 4 years ago. Now, folks, we're not talking federal taxes. We're talking about all your taxes, your
Combination.
gasoline taxes, your sales tax, your property tax in your state or county or city. All of those
Hmm.
taxes equal 50% of your income. And according to the Federal Reserve, that happened, I think it was about 3 years ago, maybe four, that they announced it and it was a big deal. Well, that was the first thing that happened in the Roman Empire. The second thing that happened in the Roman Empire was a disagreement between their parties and with Caesar, um, and they never got it back together. So therefore, they quit working. Nothing was getting done, and so the Roman Empire collapsed. They didn't have any money. They didn't collect taxes, and the income collapsed. We are really looking at facing that same situation today. I mean, they say history repeats itself. I'm not for sure what our time frame is compared to what happened during the Roman Empire, but if what is taking place today in our own federal government is somewhat what happened and caused the fall of the Roman Empire. And we are the longest living democracy that's ever been in the world.
Hmm.
The United States of America has the longest democracy that's ever been
Hmm.
successful in the world, ever.
Hmm.
Um, One can say, well, what about England? Well, when the U.S. formed democracy, England
It
was
was a
still under
monarchy,
the king and queen.
a
They had the
monarchy.
monarch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until later they saw how well we did that they kind of copied a similar type of a thing. But
Yeah. They had put the
anyway,
prime minister
it's
into
pretty
place.
interesting. I had a Dr. Harry May. I'm sure he's not with us now because he's well up in years, and fortunate to get him because he taught Western civilization at Vanderbilt University in the daytime, and he liked teaching so much he came over to UT Nashville and taught an evening class. And I was fortunate to be able to get into his evening class in all three of his semesters of Western civilization. We learned a whole lot about the beginning of government and the beginning of powers, and it just interested me. And I didn't do as well in that class as I probably could have or should have, but then he was a pretty tough grading teacher. I never will forget on our final exam on that third semester, he had written a book. I can't even remember the name of it now, but he had written this book about the Roman Empire. And we had one question on the final exam, and it was critique my book. And that was the final question of my final exam. And you talk
Hmm.
about hard, that's
Yeah.
pretty tough to do.
You can't really get it too bad of a critique, or you wanted to pass and grade. You had to do something, man. You had to eat a little bit there, buddy, and then you had to kind of back off. And then if you had some bad vibes about that book, you had to make them bad vibes into positive vibes pretty quick, or turn a negative back into a positive. So you had an electrical course too at the same time.
I, I never will forget my opening sentence. Uh, when the way I opened my beginning of my critique, I said, to understand this book, and the way it is written, you had to be a disciple of Dr. Harry May.
Yeah.
He must have liked that.
He must got you an
He
A out of
liked
that
it or
class,
somebody
didn't
did. But I never will forget that. That's the way I opened it, saying I was one of his disciples. And
he? Well,
uh, I think I only got about a C or maybe a C plus on that final exam. But hey, that's okay. That's all I wanted. Yeah.
right. Okay. Well, it is in a nutshell in that way. I mean, right now the shutdown's got everything in turmoil. I mean, it's affected a lot of people. And from our conversations that it's affected us personally. And so we're gonna jump through hoops and do a few other things, and we gotta move them back over. So
Yeah.
yeah, but we were going to discuss also. We're going to talk a little bit more about the claims process and things like that. Even though there's a shutdown going on, guys, don't not put off your intent to file just because there's a shutdown. You can call 1-800-827-1000. That's 1-800-827-1000. You can hit there and you can wait on the line and they'll answer the phone and you can explain to them that you're so and so. Here's your social security number, the last four or whatever. And I want to do an intent to file. You don't have to tell them what your intent to file is for. You tell them you're doing an intent to file and they will record that. That gives you 1 year from today that you've done the intent to file to get your documentation in for your claim. And it preserves your date. Now you got to be careful too with that because if you've got a situation to where you say you've got an issue and you file the claim, but you don't have a diagnosis, they send you for a C&P exam for someone inside the VA and you get a diagnosis, your effective date's going to be the date of that diagnosis because that's the date the condition arose.
And they would probably have to, even before they granted it, they'd probably send you back for a second C&P after the diagnosis.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
and I've seen that happen quite often.
Hmm.
Now that's a great point that you just brought up because guys, when you do this, uh, it takes a while if to start with. It's sometimes it may be faster to get that C&P than it is to
Hmm.
see a doctor to get that diagnosis.
That's
So
right.
it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Now you may be seeing a doctor and they may tell you, well, let's look at it again in 30 days or whatever. And then you definitely may have a claim you may coming up, and you may want to go ahead and do it. But I had a gentleman here that for a year and a half, his doctor would say, well, he's suffering from what appears to be um, Parkinson's symptoms.
Parkinsonians. Yeah,
Yeah, and it took him a year and a half before he said Parkinson's, that he
right.
definitely has Parkinson's. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
had him holding off because of what the doctor had said um, before we did the intent to file, because otherwise he would have been in for a C&P and a decision and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, it seems like if they're going to decline it, you get that decline a whole lot faster than what you get an approval.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, I had him to just kind of sit back and I said, as soon as you get that, do the intent to file, and then we'll fill out the paperwork and go. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
we did. And it went right straight through and very, very smooth. And he got his, I think he got a 70% just on the Parkinson's,
Mm-hmm.
but then he's over 100 because he got PTSD, got 100% for his PTSD, and then 70% for Parkinson. And then I think he got 60% for diabetes. He takes 3 shots a
Mm-hmm.
day. And he had open heart surgery with a triple bypass.
Oh, he'll
Ejection
be
factor
ready.
was, I think, around 40, 45. So I think he got
That's six.
60% that. So,
Mm-hmm.
he came out okay, but all that happened during that year and a half period that we were waiting. And we did have his PTSD in his heart prior to filing for the Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm. Well, since the PACT Act came into play, they've got a new thing too, doing with Parkinson's because I think Parkinson's is a presumptive for Vietnam vets, right, for Agent Orange exposure. But
That's
now, since
correct,
it's
providing that the doctor says you have it.
right now, they changed up a little bit. Now it's not just Parkinson's; it's anything related to Parkinsonians because basically it's the same disease.
Yeah, and
And basically,
that's
what
just been
mhm. They had to change it and update it. It's Parkinsonians now. You still got Parkinson's disease, but Parkinsonians is uh, shaking and things like that, just like Parkinson's. They call them tremors and things like that. They're trying to say, well, Parkinson's is different compared to here. Could be a neurological issue. Well, Parkinson's is a neurological issue. So they came out and said basically there's not really no distinction between the two. So Parkinsonians can now be considered Parkinson's. You still with me, Ray? But that's part of the issue. It could be considered Parkinson's disease. Um, one good thing you got to look at is when you do that attempt file, make sure you got a diagnosis. Get your diagnosis before your year's up and get it in there. Um, if you have to, go back in your old military or your old records. I would go to every doctor you ever went to and get all your records you can, anyways. But what I would do in a situation like that, I'd look at every documented issue you have and read the forms. Now, back in the old days, they didn't have these big fancy forms that had all the code numbers and stuff on them. It was a piece of basically legal paper, regular notebook paper. The doctor writes your name on there and your patient number. Then you get it and he write down what he's seen you for, and he would put these little letters, DX, semicolon. DX stands for diagnosis. And he would put down what you diagnosed. Method diagnosis. A lot of doctors will write HTN. You got hypertension, high blood pressure. He'll write diagnosis and he'll write the blood pressure readings on that form somewhere. Back in the old days, some of the old country doctors, they were just country as corn. They wouldn't write HTN for hypertension. They would write HPT. That was very common back in that day and still do it today sometimes. So if you got a claim in for hypertension, you got your claim in for
yeah,
hypertension.
back with you, I think.
And
I don't know what
yeah,
happened, but
uh, I don't know. I heard there was some aliens flying over somewhere in Tennessee. Did they get you? I thought they abducted you there for about 30 seconds.
that very well could be. I mean, we
Mm,
do have a military base close to us, so they may have
yeah,
flown over and just interrupted all the signals here or something.
probably
Yeah.
did. And I was explaining to the old days too, like back in the early days, if you had hypertension, you had a claim in for it. You had to go back in your old records, back in your private records, back, before this new computerized stuff. The doctor would take a regular piece of paper, lined paper, and he'd write your name and your patient number on it. And then he would write down your diagnosis. He would put DX with semicolon. He'd write down what it is. So if it was hypertension, he would say HTN and then whatever, whatever. But sometimes the old docs didn't use HTN, they used HPT, hypertension. That's how they were taught. Even some doctors today use it. Don't let the VA split hairs on that too, okay? That's still the same thing. You got a diagnosis of hypertension, even though it's HPT. Sometimes they try to really, really get technical with that stuff. Well, you don't have a diagnosis for it. There it is. That's not hypertension. What is that? Hyperthyroid? So that's how you do it. I mean, it's claims 101. Uh, our late buddy James Cripps, he had a process. He had steps of that process, and that's how he operated. That fella helped more veterans to win their disability claims. He did it all out of the goodness of his heart. Never charged a dime to anybody for helping them. I've never done it either. I'm sure Ray hasn't either. But we had a 4 or 5 step process. Ray, was it a 4 step?
Yeah, it's basically a four-step process.
Mm-hmm.
The
And it's
first
still
step
out
is to
there on the
get
computer. Go ahead, Ray. I'll let Ray explain to us.
Well, first step, we've already talked about intent to file, how to do that.
Yep.
And the second is what we were talking about when I lost my signal, which is the diagnosis.
Right.
And the third step, which is very important, and I'll tell you the way James had me do it and explained it to me, is the 4138, which is additional evidence,
Hmm.
personal evidence, personal knowledge. Now,
Personal statement.
here's the philosophy that he uses on that part, which will work, really will work almost every time for you. The VA in the law states that a 50-50 decision between doctors has to go to the veteran. In other words, one doctor says you got a condition, the other doctor says no, you don't. Now, that is a 50-50, and you should win your case with that. But his philosophy is to shoot the silver bullet. That's what he'd tell me, get your
Hmm.
silver bullet out. Now, with the silver bullet would be an additional piece of evidence. Now, that can come from several sources. Mostly what he had me do, which he did himself, is um, he would use two other doctors. He would go to two doctors. Now, in his case, he was like me. We used the VA medical only. So therefore, the second doctor we had to pay, or the second and third doctor, we had to pay out of our pocket. Now, a normal doctor's visits is $120. And the way he had me do it, and the way he did it, and the way he had others do it, is you walk in there with your diagnosis out of your VA medical records. You can print it off right there at home.
Hmm.
And that is if they have said you have this condition. And you walk in and you hand the doctor that and say, "This is what the VA states. Do you concur with this statement?" And he does his exam. And if he says, "Yeah, I do," well, would you put that in a letter form for me, please? Go back a couple of days and pick it up. If he says, "No, you don't," you ask for the same thing. Would you put that in letter form? He does the letter, you walk out, you wad it up, you throw it in the nearest trash can because it's not going to help you. You paid for it, it's your item. You don't even have to tell him you got it. Okay. And you go find
Right.
another one, you go find a third one. And that was the way he had me do it. And then also, you can use your family or spouse or a very close friend that has known you for years or whatever, who is willing to write a letter stating that this, you have this condition and this is what they have seen it do to you, your problems with
Hmm.
it. Those are the evidence part that he taught me how to do. And I've won with that. I've won other people's with that. For example, I have a gentleman right now. Well, I have two gentlemen. They both have PTSD. Now, the first one that's already been approved, it's got 100%. Um, he had gotten fired from his job and couldn't work anymore. He was in his, at the time he was like 66, 67. And they gave him a letter of separation that, due to the fact of your uh, incapability of working with others at the present time, we're going to have to ask you to resign. Okay. I told him that was the best thing that could ever happen to him. He didn't realize at the time he thought it was the worst thing because he thought that helped him keep him from getting another job. And it probably would have. It probably did. But on the other hand, what they do, they call and ask if you're employable, and of course, with that letter in your thing, they're going to say no, he's not employable.
Hmm.
This other gentleman who I've gotten to go with right now, he has some bad PTSD, and
Hmm.
his employer, which happens to be the state of Tennessee, uh, made him resign for the same reason. He kept getting in
Hmm.
arguments with everybody, and I think he finally actually hauled off and hit one of his coworkers.
Oh no.
Uh, yeah, and in that particular case, they let him go, and they didn't give him. They just let him go. They didn't give him Well, he didn't get a separation notice. They have one, but he didn't get it. He didn't know to ask for it or whatever. And so
Hmm.
I was talking to him and his wife. I said, "Y'all need to go back and see if you can get that." And sure enough, there was one there, and it was on state letterhead. And they had the form filled out, but then the supervisor had written him a letter, which he had to sign, which he had to sign the other form as well, stating he understood the reasons why he was being dismissed. And now they have presented that as evidence.
Right.
And in the same case, this gentleman had threatened to shoot his next door neighbor
Oh,
in
really?
an argument. So I told his wife, I said, I know he can't go do it, but would you go and talk to your next door neighbor and ask him if he would write down what happened and just the fact that he threatened to shoot him? So she went over there and she told the guy, we're doing this to try to get him help. The guy said, sure, he needs help. So he sat down and wrote out a letter and said exactly what happened, what the argument was about, and that the guy got so irate he couldn't reason with him. He said, I'm just going to go
Hmm.
by getting a gun and shoot you. So now that's been turned in as evidence. That's the fact he
Right.
can't work or get along with others, showing his severity of his PTSD. Hadn't got an answer on that one yet. It's at the Board of Appeals, but we hadn't got an answer.
What do you have to go to the board for?
I'm sorry,
Say,
I
right.
barely can hear you there.
What did you have to go to the board for?
Well,
You
he
got
had already
denied?
been denied. Yeah, he had already been denied, and uh, let me just say he was trying to work through our local county service office and wasn't really
Oh,
getting anywhere. And for whatever reason, I think it might have also had some personality conflicts there. So anyway, that's where we are now. He has appealed it to the board, and I given him the name of an agent that I had the other guy use down in
ah,
Jacksonville is or in Orlando. So got those two
okay.
hooked up together now. I hope and hopefully everything will work out, and he'll be calling me in 6 or 8 months, telling me he's got 100%.
Good deal. Good deal, but it makes it worthwhile, And but that's the way it is, man. I mean, you can fairly get denied, and you sit there at your wits' end. I mean, I see a lot of denials lately over a bunch of junk, because nowadays when they do a denial letter, you get a big denial in the mail, and they give you this little thing on there called what do they call that? Favorable findings. You know what I'm saying? You see those favorable findings, right?
Yeah,
Like, we're denying you for aid attendance. Okay. Then you go down to favorable findings. Veteran requires aid attendance. So it's kind of
yeah.
a
I think
misnomer, but
they're using that AI, artificial intelligence, to do a lot of those now. And there's still
yep.
several years ago they started the cut and paste, and I've actually seen
Hmm.
some letters that denied someone, and what they cut and pasted and sent to the guy had nothing to do with his condition or his claim. And of course, he went
Hmm.
back to him and, oh, we made a mistake. We'll get that corrected. But
Hmm.
it's just delayed. And if he had not paid attention to it, or if he had not
Hmm.
asked someone who had an idea of what was going on,
Right.
he probably would have dropped the case and dropped the ball and would have never gotten his disability benefits.
Can you imagine the number of veterans that's actually been through a very similar situation as that guy that actually did give up and quit?
Yeah, I was almost ready to give up, and Pam was standing next to me when I threw the letter down and got mad. And I said, I quit. And she said, no, you're not. You're not going to. So I think
Hmm.
behind each one of us, you and myself and James, we've all had a spouse that supported us and wanted to help
Hmm.
us see the fight through to the very end.
Guys, I want you to listen to what that man just said. That's probably one of the most important things you're going to hear on this radio show or this TV video show or this production. You need somebody beside you to go through this process with you because this process will cause you to have One thing, it'll cause you to have headaches. It'll cause you to overstudy. It'll cause you to lose track of time because you're going to be simply stuck at a computer or a book 7 days a week, as many hours a day as you need to, because you can't just read one part of this and get it. It's going to take
No.
several different times of reading it because every time you read it, you'll see something new. Have a spouse, preferably a wife, to take this ride with you and have them hold your hand because you're going to be depressed, you're going to get angry, and you're going to cry. Okay.
Been
I
there,
kid you
done
not.
that.
Hmm?
Been there,
Yeah,
done that.
that's right. That's what happens. But after you win, you're going to go through another bout of depression because you're going to realize uh, I'm disabled. I'm boogered up now. What am I going to do? That's another bout you're going to go through. Everybody does it. You're going to say you're
Well,
not,
and
but
as you get,
when it happens,
and as it gets worse, I can remember. Well, I guess it was a year and a half ago now, 2 years ago. I finally broke down, and my primary care turned in for me to have an electric wheelchair. And
yeah,
we have a great guy who works in prosthetics here, Donnie Smart. He called me and he said, "Ray, I understand I have a request for an electric wheelchair. Are you sure that's what you want?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so. I think the time's come for me to put it in." He said, "Ray, your time came in 2016." He said, "I was ready to
hmm
give you one in 2016." And he had put a note in his notes, and it's been in my records, that he thought back in 2016 that I should have an electric wheelchair.
you should have.
Uh,
Because
it's hard to give up and think that you kind of hope that you're going to get better, and as long as you don't get worse, you think, well, the next step's to get better, and you kind of keep hanging in there and hanging in there and getting around the best you can. But I'm telling
hmm
you, once I've made that decision to go to that electric wheelchair, that has changed my life, and it's much more. Uh, I know I'm
hmm
a much more pleasant person to get along with because
Right.
at night my back's not hurting, my knees aren't hurting.
hmm
Uh, I haven't stumbled during the day. And for a lot of reasons like that, you feel better, and it just kind of builds and builds. And right now, I can say I am um, don't like it, but I'm content and have accepted the conditions that
hmm
this Agent Orange has put me in.
2 years
Um,
ago, we had a
so,
conference down there in Winchester. You hosted a conference,
yeah,
and we came down. Alex came down. I came down. James came down. I sit at a table across from there, and I watched you. And I just noticed how uncomfortable you were on that scooter because you kept repositioning and things like that. You had your legs stretched out. You had that done. You kept leaning back. After I seen that, I said, well, let's wait a little bit. And I started talking to you after the fact. I said, Ray, I think you need a wheelchair. I said, it's going to be a lot easier on you to get through the house. It's going to be a lot easier on your back sitting there. It's just going to be a whole lot easier on you. And we talked about that. You remember that?
I do remember talking about that with you that
Hmm
right after the conference was over with.
Yeah. And I said, that's one reason why when the time ever comes for me, I'm not going to get a scooter. If I go to Disney World, I'll rent one, or something like that. But I want a power chair. I don't want a scooter because, uh, uh, it's easier to handle a wheelchair. You got your joystick controller, and you can do it easier. Plus, you can drive it up inside a van too. You can do a scooter the same way. But good buddy of mine had one down at the VA somewhere, and he got a speeding ticket on a scooter going down the hall too fast. It was Wild Bill Sheik, I rest his soul. He was something else. I said, "What's wrong, Bill?" He said, "I got in trouble today." I said, "What happened, Bill?" He said, "I was going down the hall too fast and the cops run me down."
Uh,
Hmm, yeah, so the scooters are nice, don't get me wrong. And they're okay as long as you can, but you start getting neuropathy and things in your feet, I mean, scooters are okay, but if you lose any feel in your legs at all, you fall out of scooter. If you're sitting on your butt in a wheelchair and you sit there, and you got your arms, you're not going to fall out of it. Plus, they got seatbelts in there, right?
Yeah, yeah, they come with seatbelts. You got seatbelts
Mm-hmm.
around you.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, next thing be
well,
airbags.
just you're right. The ride, and you're more comfortable at night when it's all over with.
Yeah.
Um, and I tell you what, uh, when I go to Wally World or Home Depot or Lowe's, it's a lot easier riding around in a wheelchair than it is that scooter. That scooter takes a lot of room to turn around. You got to turn and back and
Yeah.
turn and back. Sometimes you bump into shelves and stuff. I don't have that same problem with that wheelchair. It's got a you can turn 360 on it. So
Yeah, it's 360.
um,
It's like driving a tank. You get your teeth, you turn on a dime.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you can. I mean, that's what it's for. It's what it does. The scooter is long wheelbase. You got to cover that wheelbase when you turn. It's like having a regular John Deere mower or a 360 John Deere mower. Huh? You get more done with a 360 if you ain't dizzy time you get done turning. But hmm, that's a lot
Well,
of fun.
it really made a difference in my life, and I would think it would make a difference in everyone's life
Mhm.
when it gets to that point. If
You can.
whoever's in charge of your prosthetics group at your
Mhm.
VA tells you we think you need to go to a wheelchair, don't argue with them. I did.
No, no. Yeah.
They were
I mean,
right. I was wrong.
I didn't want to get my roller or things like that, but I mean, I'm glad I did. Because if I get in the store and get orthostatic, I'll just turn that sucker around and plop myself down and wait. That's all you can do.
Yeah,
That beats hitting the concrete. And believe me and the concrete in this house is very, very close friends. We punched it, we've hit it quite a few times. So let's recap, Ray. The first one is your intent to file. Don't ever forget that's the first thing you do is your intent to file. That preserves your effective date. As long as you've got everything already set up with the diagnosis and things like that. Because you got to watch them. They'll try to hoodoo you with a different date if you get a diagnosis later. The second thing is, go ahead, Rice.
well, the second thing would be to make sure and get your information together from your doctor's notes
Mm-hmm.
that has the diagnosis,
Right.
and that diagnosis is going to have a date, and that's important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what I did, and what James would recommend us do, we print out the page that has the diagnosis, and then you circle and highlight the diagnosis so they can't miss it.
Right. And the third thing would be a statement on a 214138 for additional evidence. Keep in mind, people, additional evidence can be any type of evidence that's supportive of that claim, including the VA likes to call them lay statements. And a lay statement is just a statement from somebody else beside you. Yours is a lay statement too. Your wife, your children, your friends, they can write any statement they want to write about you. How do you living? Do you need help with the activities of daily living? What are you like? Have you beat anybody up this week? Things like that. Any good statement adds value to that claim. You know, it's not as heavy as medical doctor statements, but it's still, it adds value, and it can be
And it
probated later
depends.
on
I
down the
was
road.
reading when I was reading one place, and and they made the statement: uh, if you have a friend that's an elected official, or
Hmm.
your minister, or your Sunday school teacher,
Right.
those were the best because for whatever reason they have the tendency to honor
Carry more
those and
weight.
look at those that and carry heavier
Hmm.
weight than your next door neighbor. And
Hmm.
make sure when they sign the letter, you know, they put down there if they're your pastor, Sunday school teacher, county commissioner, sheriff, whoever.
Hmm.
And
And
that's really important.
if it's any professional, regardless of what profession it is, they can put their credentials on there too. You know, say if you got somebody in the
Yeah,
family that's a doctor that knows you, they put their credentials on there and have them they can put an opinion. It doesn't matter if a doctor's your brother-in-law. If he's an MD, he's an MD. They cannot
yeah.
discount
Your
his opinion. All he
Yeah,
has to do is put his
I
John
guess
Hancock. Go
son-in-laws
ahead, Ray.
count that way too, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's your son-in-law, your son, your outlaws, your in-laws, your uplaws, your downlaws, in-laws, and outlaws.
Just make
It
sure when
don't matter.
he signs it MD at the end of it.
That's right. And he has to put a little resume on there. He can do the same thing, write you an IMO, anything. All he can do is put the research article and stuff on there he got it from. They cannot discount that. Even though it might be a lay statement, it gets more weight because it's got that MD on there.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's always good. Evidence wins claims, people. How that evidence is presented wins claims better, people. And how that evidence is adjudicated wins your claim too. So you got to make sure you got your I's dotted and your T's crossed because you don't want to get off the rails on a claim. You get off the rails and it ain't like putting a train back on the track. It takes you a while to get back on. And up to I can see anywhere from 10 to 15 years to get back in track or later.
Yeah,
I've seen some guys take
because
over
of a
20.
simple mistake.
Hmm. One simple
And
mistake.
there's one other
If
thing
you
I
got, yeah,
recommend today, not necessarily a few years ago, but today. Once you file that claim, don't start looking the next week. Like I've heard you say, don't look next week at the postman to come. It's
that's
going
right.
to
Don't be
take a
sending
while.
reports. Don't be sending reports the bulldog in the mailbox the next. If you file a claim on Friday, don't be on the porch Monday with bulldog in the mailbox.
Yeah. So, with that
Mm.
being said, what can you do? Well, to start with, you can go back and look for other conditions that may be connected with this for later.
Secondary.
Uh,
Mhm.
and the other thing you can look at, which I recommend everyone to do in today's world. And notice how I said that today's world.
Mhm.
I would start thinking about how to find a, a certified Nova agent and start
I would
interviewing
do. Yeah,
just in
you can.
case. I know in the state of Tennessee, uh, 95% or 94.5% of the first claims are rejected.
Mhm.
Now get that 94.5% are
Mhm.
rejected or denied.
Right.
Okay. Now that means that 94.5% of all the veterans that turned in a claim has got to either come up with a higher level review, a supplemental claim, or go directly to the board. That's your choice. That's your three choices.
Mhm.
So if you're going to do any of those today, I know James told me this was just literally days before he passed away. He said, I wouldn't recommend anybody going all the way anymore by themselves.
No.
Now that was his statement. And he was the one that went all the way to get to be the first person to be Agent Orange in the continental United States. And he fought it
Mhm.
and did it all his way. But
Mhm.
that was one of his statements to me there. I'm going to say in less than 3 weeks before he passed away,
Yeah,
because we were talking about this. And
that guy took a
I
lot
think,
out of
what do
him
we have
too.
now? 350 or 400 agents around the country?
But guys, if you want to know, they supposed to have a test last week for another edition, but I think the shutdown got it a little bit delayed. Go to www.va.gov and log in. When you log in, go to the search engine, do a list of accredited agents and attorneys. They'll pop that list up. You'll get all these names and got their email addresses on there, and you can say, okay, here's a guy close to me. Let's do A, B, C, D. They can do your claim nationwide. I would make a form letter email, and I would pick 10 of them, and I would say, write the email to all 10 of them, copy, all them. Say, my name is so and so, and I am doing this and this and this, and here's my information. I want to know which agents are available that would assist me in processing an original VA claim, not an appeal, but an original VA claim, with the promise of having them represent me in the appeal process. Shall I get denied? You follow me, Ray?
That's another good way. Some of
Now,
them will do it. I know
yeah,
I haven't talked with him. I don't know if you've talked with him since, but maybe several months ago, we had on the program the gentleman out of, I think he's out of Jacksonville, Florida, Robin Hood. Is he out of
Robin.
Jacksonville or Miami?
Yeah, he's an attorney. He's an attorney out of Jacksonville. And
Okay, and
yes,
when
folks,
in his
his name is
conversation, he was talking about possibility looking at doing that with the
yeah.
understanding that if they were denied, he would be the one to represent them
All
on in
right.
the rest of the steps
And his
and
name is
any
Robin
future
Hood.
claims that they may have.
His name is Robin Hood, folks. You can't make this stuff up. His name is actually Robin Hood, and
Yeah,
he's pretty good at what he does. He used to be a VA Raider, so he knows his stuff.
yeah, yeah. He used to work for the
You
VA.
know. So look him up. Let's look up Robin Hood attorney on the Google there, and if you need to get a hold of Robin Hood, there you can do it. Uh, they'll help you out with appeals too. Now things are different when you go to court. When you go to the CABC, because what happens then is you have to pay a $50 processing fee, filing fee, and then they register it at the court, and you get bombarded by letters in the mail. Excuse me. That talk to representations. You send your stuff to each one of them, and then they look at your claim and pick it. Say, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like mine last one I had to settle on. Settle. Finally, charged with an attorney down in Florida and down in Georgia, and they took the case. But I've had several of them said there's not enough meat on the bones. They say, Ray, not
That's a
enough
good way to
retro
put
or
it.
whatever. But you got to realize something. If you are going to court, whether it be the Veterans Court or the Federal Circuit, if you appeal on a Veterans Court decision, they didn't deny you, and it goes to the next level. Even at the CABC, you can file for uh, what's it called? It's a waiver, and basically the attorney's fees are paid by the government. It's called EAJA, the Equal Act for Justice Amendment. And that's a very important thing because, if you need help like that, they can take care of that. And if you win, your fees are paid. You know, the attorney gets paid, things like that. Even at the next level of court, it's the same way. So it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. What else we got, Ray?
Well, basically, that was basically the two main topics of my show this past week were those
Mm-hmm.
two topics, and it seems like we discussed a little bit of a third topic somewhere along the road
Oh,
there, but I can't remember
yeah.
today.
Guys, do me a favor. All right. Small town USA. Say you and the wife are going over to the Boogie Woogie Depot or going down to the Piggly Wiggly or to the local eating establishment to have the buffet. And you walk out front and there's a little tent sitting there with these two dudes sitting saying they represent a certain organization.
Oh yeah, blue tent, wearing blue vest to the
Mm-hmm.
yellow stripe. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That was our third
Yeah,
topic.
that's what it is. Yeah, you be nice to them. Say, hey man, you got some kind of documentation where you can be here, who you're with to prove, you got a copy of your 501c3 and all that good stuff, so I can look at it before I make a donation to you. If they don't have it, so time I come out of the store, you better have it. So you go in the store and do what you got to do and come out. And, oh man, we don't have that. We got our boss of this and this. Okay, man, I can't give you a donation. I'm sorry. Next, get in the car, call your local blue light boys at the Kmart special, have them come over and give them a little talking to because there's a lot of fraud out there anymore, people. And if they can't prove who
Well,
they are,
and let's explain that a little further. There is a lot of
mm-hmm,
individuals that will. The one that I ran into Sunday, which is what brought the topic up. They're well known, advertised on television, but the
mm-hmm,
group that I confronted were not a part of that group. They had their tent, they had their vest, they had
mm-hmm,
some of their brochures and flyers, but they were not a part of that group. And the
mm-hmm,
money that they collected was not going to a veteran of anywhere. Now, most of the time, for example, if this particular group is collecting in the state of Tennessee, it doesn't stay in Tennessee. It goes off
Mm-hmm.
to New York, or if it's the one that's in
Right.
Pennsylvania, it goes off to Pennsylvania. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the problem with that is that none of that may ever get to a veteran in your community. Okay. So, in probably every little small town in the state of Tennessee, they have a peddler's license. A peddler's license
Mm-hmm.
can go anywhere from 2 weeks to 14 days. They have to apply for it. Different cities have different regulations. In this particular case, I called my city hall locally to see if they had one. No, they did not. And then the next town over, I called and they had one. And I said, did this group request a permit? No, never heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were outside of such and such a location store there collecting. What should I have done? The guy said very clearly, just exactly what you said. He said, don't confront them, don't start arguments, just go to your car, get on your cell phone, call 911 and ask for the police to come and ask them for their credentials and for their permit. And you stand there to be witness that they tried to collect money from you.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what'll happen? Worst case scenario, they'll be run off and told to get out of town. And
Mm-hmm.
the next scenario, which might be the best scenario, they talk back to the officer or whatever, and they'll find themselves arrested. You know,
Mm-hmm.
or in one case that I heard of in Nashville, which was on the news, they stopped them at one location. They shut down, went down the road to another shopping mall, got out, set up in it, out in the front.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go inside; they're sitting out in the front. And somebody called again, and this time the police, when they went down there, they were told not to ask for their permits. If they still didn't have the permit with them or on them, then go ahead and put them under arrest because that was their
Mm-hmm.
second time. I don't know if it's the
Mm-hmm.
same people or not, but they had that on Channel 5 News out of Nashville. Oh, it's about a year and a
Mm-hmm.
half, 2 years ago. And then this past Sunday, I actually saw them in the small town where I go shopping a lot, um,
Mm-hmm.
next to us here, about 15 miles away. And I didn't do that. I made the mistake confronting them and I told them what I thought about them, which wasn't
Mm-hmm.
very kind words. But then I went in the
Ooh.
store and asked the manager if they'd given them permission to set up out there. They said no. I said, well, they're stopping every one of your customers as they come in and out asking them for a donation to help veterans. And I told her a little
Mm-hmm.
about what they did. She went out and she asked them for the permit. They said their manager had it. She said, would you have him come by and show it to me? She had to go back in the store, of course. She couldn't leave the store while no telling when the manager, if there was ever one coming. And she goes, well, I go out. I was only in the store 10 minutes. And by the time I went out, they were gone. Tent was down, the table was down, nothing, you never even knew they were set there. I mean, they were
Right.
gone in less than 10 minutes. So that told
I'll
me
show you
that they were
crooks.
exactly who I thought they were.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they were
And none of
crooks.
probably zero money that they collected that day from individuals um,
Went anything but their
went
pocket.
in anybody's pocket except theirs.
I call it the fat pocket booth. That way, because when they get your money, they're gonna stick it in their pocket and get the fat pocket, and that's gonna be their money instead of yours.
Yeah,
It's like trying to fish a
yeah.
bass tournament and seeing a fish basket tied to a dock somewhere with fish in it.
Well, what ended up in Nashville when it finally got to the court, the guy testified that they arrested that he got to keep 25% for his daily salary, and the rest of it he had to send to a particular person who actually was in Pennsylvania. And
Mm-hmm.
they said they'd follow up, but I never heard any follow up story. But the DA was considering going to Pennsylvania and have him expedited back to Tennessee. But
Mm-hmm.
more than likely, it was not going to be worth the expense. So they just gave him a warning not to get him out of here. But they didn't listen. They may have got him out of Nashville, but they're still in
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee.
Well, get them out of there. Just they can prove who they are, because this is Crazy. Anytime there's money to be had, people will try to find some way to get it. That's why you get fraud within the government systems like Social Security, VA benefits, Medicare. People would find a way to make that money. No matter how they make
Yeah, and
it.
if you're interested,
Mm.
look, folks, it's real simple. If you're going to donate to anybody, I don't care what organization, you can go on and look up online. You can look up some of the organization watchdogs, and they have a list of good organizations, national organizations.
That's right.
But in any case, if you want to donate to a veteran, there's a lot of veterans almost in every community,
Hmm.
organizations that you can donate, and that money stays in your community. And whether it's a Legion, DVA, or VFW, or
Hmm.
veteran Vietnam Riders, or those groups, they would that
PVA.
funds, if you donate directly to them, those funds stay in that community.
Hmm.
And most of them have certain projects that they work on to help veterans. I know that locally, um, our DAV does a lot helping put ramps
Hmm.
in and
Hmm.
uh, things of that
Well,
nature around the house, could
that's
contract
good.
for it. And I
From a
know that
national
the
thing.
VFW kind of leads the charge, and we make sure. I think we got 68 veterans and spouses of veterans here in Franklin County that live below the poverty line. And so we
Hmm.
get together Christmas food baskets and things like that at Christmas through the VFW. They do all of that. Get
Hmm.
that together. We help support that through the American Legion and things of that nature. So if you want to help veterans and you want it to be in your local area, look up one of those organizations that are in your area that work with veterans and donate there.
Right. We're about out of time, but I want to say one more thing. Ray's correct. If you're going to go on a national level, I would look at things like tunnel to towers. Look where the money, who
Yes.
gets the most bang for their buck, because they pay off houses for service members, disabled folks, police officers, things like that. That's awesome. Number
And
two,
I think over 80% of their funds goes directly to do that. It's not
it's over 90,
like
96.
one of the other
It's like
90. Okay.
96, 98%. Yeah, it's way up there.
And,
Now,
and one of these other national organizations that you and I are familiar with that advertise all the time on television, uh, it's quite the opposite.
hmm
75% goes to their administrative costs, and only 20 or
hmm
25% goes to help a veteran.
oh, you talk about that's called the fat pocket group.
That's well, and they got
Hmm.
a real nice television advertising. And when I watch it, I
Hmm.
get aggravated because a lot of the equipment almost all the equipment that they're showing that the veteran uses is given to him by the VA. It's not. I even
Hmm.
recognize some of their equipment because I got some of their equipment. So I recognize the
Hmm.
wheelchair and I recognize the lift coming out of the van and all that.
Hmm.
So
Now,
yeah,
Ray's are spot on. Now, if you're doing a local level like that, you see the DAB and other folks like that, go ahead and ask them for your donuts to make sure that the people in that area, in that county, or in that group area, that their coverage area, are getting the benefits of that donation. It's kind of like,
yep,
you know, uh, make sure that it's going to help your neighbors. You know, unless a disaster happens in the next county over, then yeah, that's a big deal, right? But just for general helping people out, do it that way. Make sure that the money is going to be. Uh, I'd like to be able to see where my money's going to. You know what I mean, Ray?
absolutely. And when you go to some of
Yeah.
those, like we had a car show here by the VFW a couple of weeks ago. If you want to attend that car show, usually car shows are free. They make their money from the people that enter into the car show, but they usually have also a basket or a bucket that you can
Hmm.
drop your own donation in if you want. And you're going to see people there that so it's in your community.
That's right. Make sure it's in your community. Make sure the money. I mean, it's more bang for your buck because that if so and so over here and they're hurting a little bit, need some help, and you want to donate and bring them help, give them a boost. You know. All right, Ray, we're totally out of time. Uh, appreciate you as usual. Coming on, give some great information. Always do, always will. This was kind of a carryover to your show last week. You did it on Tuesday morning with Mr. Fraley, but we'll be back next week with Miss Spangenberg. She's going to discuss a few things, and I think we might do the show on a different day. I'll know more here in a day or so, given the fact that well, tomorrow night's Halloween, but the 6th of November is another day we got to worry about. And with that, this will be John. John Stacy's Exposed Vet Productions. They call me Jbasser, the fisherman, and Mr. Ray Cobb out of Tennessee. We'll be shutting her down for now. We'll see you later, Ray.
All right. Good night.
All right.